From Quito, Ecuador, I'm Soini Gray, and this is From the South, the midday news brief from Tell Us Your English. We start this new edition right now. We begin in Colombia, where President Juan Manuel Santos has announced a comprehensive intervention in Tumaco, the scene of violence in recent weeks. The intervention includes the creation of a joint task force made up of members of the Army, Navy, Air Force, and police. Santos said the forces deploying to Tumaco will include 4,000 members of the armed forces and 2,500 police officers. There have been several violent incidents in the region in recent weeks, including the killing of social leaders such as Jose Jade Cortez and the massacre of 7 coca farmers. More than 120 social leaders have been killed in Colombia this year alone, putting the country's peace process in question. We have more in this report.
While the national government breaches the peace deal, we are being killed. With that severe sentence, campesinos and social leaders called for an indefinite national strike beginning on October 23rd.
The national government is breaching the agreements of the voluntary substitution of illicit crop cultivation, and they are imposing the violent eradication. It continues with the violation of human rights and the murder of social leaders, especially by paramilitary groups and the police.
The current picture in Colombia cannot be more bleak. During the last week, 13 people were killed in different territories. Among them are 6 former FARC guerrillas, 2 indigenous people, 4 social leaders, and a rural school teacher.
What
we really want is for the government to fulfill the Havana Agreement and respect us and the campesinos leaders. They need to respect our lives and give us guarantees to continue on with the process that we lead today.
Among those lives which were snatched away by the violence was Patricia Castano. In these pictures that were filmed only a month and a half ago in Medellin, we can see Patricia wearing the white shirt. She was a victim of the armed conflict, and she was a social leader and a human rights defender. And it was here where she resisted the paramilitary violence and the mafias that still control the poor areas of Medellin. More than 120 social leaders have been killed so far in this year. And that's not the only type of violence that is inflicted on the Colombian people. The campesinos are still stigmatized, criminalized, and persecuted by the Colombian state. That's the reason why the coca, marijuana, and poppy growers are also going to take to the streets across the entire country to demand that the government fulfill the peace deal.
If shooting campesinos could solve the problem, it would have been solved a long time ago. If fumigation could solve the problem would already be fixed. But the numbers and the facts prove that this approach of criminal persecution against campesinos has failed. And that is why the Havana deal is very important. And it's key, because it's working by recognizing the human rights of the campesinos.
This is the forgotten Colombia. The one that is continuing to struggle with the effects of the armed conflict. People are still burying their dead. In the midst of the violence, they start to prepare for the national mobilization, a claim for peace, dignity, and respect for the living.
An autopsy is underway in Argentina to determine if the body found in the Chubut River belongs to the missing activist Santiago Maldonado or not. Experts from all parties are taking part in the procedure, which began in the morning in the judicial morgue in Buenos Aires. The body arrived on Thursday after being transferred by plane from the naval base. The body was accompanied by the judge in the case, Gustavo Leral, and Maldonado's family. During a press conference, the family said they had stayed next to the body for 7 hours for fear that someone might alter what could be the scene of a crime. There's a lot of expectation surrounding the work of these forensic experts. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Gado Esteban, has the details.
We're outside of the judicial morgue here in the city of Buenos Aires, where approximately 2 hours ago, forensic experts began to try to identify the body that was found last Tuesday near the Chubut River. The river is close to the Mapuche territory of Cuxamén, where on the 1st of August, police violently cracked down on the community and Santiago Maldonado disappeared. There's a lot of expectation for this investigation. There are 20 experts working closely and in detail on this investigation. They will initially need to assess 4 points in order to successfully determine the person and the cause of death. The first one is to identify this body, whether or not it is Santiago Maldonado. Second, the date of death, to try and determine if the person died on August 1st, and where this police repression of the Mapuche community took place. Also, they're finding out the cause of death and the reasons why this person died. If this person drowned or choked or was hit by an object. So there's a lot of expectation regardless of the outcome of the 4 assessments. But on the other hand, experts cannot use their cell phones inside this building. There's only one camera that's recording all of the work that the forensic scientists will do. There's another expert taking pictures with a permanent camera registering every step of this process. But as there was pictures seen on social media that created certain concern, they asked people not to publish them in respect of the family, especially the family of Santiago Maldonado. That's why they're taking these precautions. There's another expert taking pictures with a permanent camera registering every step of this process. But as there was pictures seen on social media that created certain concerns, they asked people not to publish them in respect of the families, especially the family of Santiago Maldonado. That's why they're taking these precautions. There are a lot of expectations for the situation in this judicial morgue in Buenos Aires. People are waiting for any information, even when authorities have already said that there won't be anything concrete said today. We're expecting to wait for at least a week for any concrete information regarding the identity of the body that was found last Tuesday in the Cuxamén area in the province of Chubut.
Thanks to Igado Esteban for that report. The U.S. military said that this week it carried out a drone strike against the Al-Shabaab extremist group in Somalia, shortly after the group was blamed for the country's deadliest attack. Saturday's truck bombing killed over 300 people and left almost 400 others injured. The strike took place some 35 miles away from the capital of Mogadishu. According to the Associated Press, the U.S. said it's still assessing the results of the attack. Now to our correspondent, Oscar Espelde, for the latest updates from Somalia.
Our impressions are that people are trying to recover from the shock. They're speaking out and blaming Al-Shabaab for the problems that Somalia is facing. The injured people we found yesterday at the Madina's hospital wanted to express themselves and also asked for the help to rebuild and move forward with their lives. The talks established to build a federal state seem to help make the city safer and change the tale of the never-ending failed state and begin the work for the poor and recover faster from the drought. And this attack, although it's considered by many to be Al-Shabaab, even though no one has claimed responsibility, is a tragedy for the people. On the 18th, people took to the streets to protest against Al-Shabaab and asked the government for protection. This green zone we are in right now is surrounded by checkpoints and strict security measures, but the people of Mogadishu have been constantly exposed to bomb attacks over the last few years. The guarantee would be to end Al-Shabaab's threatening rule, but the big question whether it can be done with airstrikes aimed at villages that are supposedly under control of Islamic armed groups. In fact, according to investigations, there are signs this brutal attack was planned in the zone that was attacked by US Special Forces only a few weeks ago, causing civilian casualties, including children.
That report from Oscar Espelde from Somalia. More news in a minute. Stay with us. The Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, has been attending the local swearing-in of socialist governors elected last weekend. In the state of Carabobo, he said the United States had no moral authority to promote intervention in Venezuela.
I have the numbers here. In Carabobo, 59.9% of the electorate took part. In the United States, barely 50% take part. So what can the U.S. government say about our democracy? They have no authority to comment. We will not accept the interventionist attitude of the United States in matters that correspond exclusively to the Venezuelan people.
The scale of the victory of the Chavistas in the regional elections has surprised many observers. So what was it based on? Our team in Caracas have been looking into the possible reasons in this report.
18 of 23 governorships are now decorated with PSUV colours after last Sunday's regional elections. With a historic turnout of 61%, the candidates of the GPP, the socialist-led coalition, won more than 5,200,000 votes, or 53.65% of the total. The question now is why Chavismo won.
Why has Chavismo won? Because it's rooted in the people, because it has a genuine connection with people's needs, with their reality. This is a connection that opinion polls cannot perceive.
The truth is, there is not one single reason for this victory, and it would be simplistic to say that Chavismo won just because the opposition, divided in what it says and does, lost votes and support. To understand this victory, analysts say it's necessary to understand Chavismo as a form of identity, as a factor of cohesion in a society that is organized and aware that Venezuela is at war. A war without bombs, but a war all the same.
Because there's an economic war and a psychological operation that the revolution and our people are defeating. This is what is becoming clear.
The sanctions imposed by the United States are part of this war that Venezuela is suffering, which suffocates it and prevents it importing food or medicine. It combines with the inflation and the international media coverage with its talk of dictatorship in a country where there are elections on average every 11 months.
Chavismo has been able to pull together the expectations, complaints and identities that were denied throughout Venezuelan history.
Chavismo also ensures stability at moments of crisis, with the social missions, the food support, the price controls on basic products. These create an essential awareness when people come to vote. On the other hand, we cannot forget the last violent months in Venezuela, promoted by the right-wing opposition with the so-called guarimbas. This violence ended suddenly thanks to the election of the National Constituent Assembly.
Sunday's results, the stabilization of the political landscape, the channeling of social conflict into legal and electoral paths, show that this was the right decision on the Constituent Assembly to check the social polarization that exists today.
The National Constituent Assembly has given new life to the members and grassroots organizations of the Chavistas. It also demobilized and divided the opposition, whose followers accuse their leaders of not having achieved their goals. This led to widespread abstention by the right in these elections now seen as historic and decisive for the future of Venezuela.
Our correspondent Reagan Devines joins us live now from Caracas. Reagan. Reagan, it seems that the international media and international governments don't seem to understand how important Chavismo is to the Venezuelans. Why do you think they have such an issue with Chavismo as a political process or political ideology?
Well, this feud goes back to the late 90s when Hugo Chavez won this massive election and more or less took Venezuela from underneath the thumb of imperialism. But at the heart of this war that has been ongoing for about 2 decades now is the fact that the United States, or it's assumed, wants control over Venezuelan oil, which is, as we know, has one of the greatest reserves, largest reserves in the world. And this is what, and of course Venezuela's relationship with Cuba has also always been of great concern to the United States, having communism and socialism so close to their, well, in this hemisphere with them. And so this in-battling has been ongoing. The United States has been found to have been feeding the rhetoric, feeding the antics of the Venezuelan opposition, feeding them with money, weapons, different things that they would be needing to fight Chavismo, to fight this battle against Hugo Chavez and now Nicolas Maduro's government.
And the people in Venezuela have clearly spoken during the elections, and yet the international media and international government are still criticizing the Venezuelan country and their political system. What will it take, in your estimation, I mean, what are people telling you? What will it take for them to understand that this is actually a democracy that is functioning?
No, from what I've heard on the streets, it will take nothing at all. They will keep fighting, they will keep trying until they ultimately defeat these socialist movements, Nicolas Maduro's government. Listen, the United States and its allies are being fed information, be them lies or not, by the Venezuelan opposition, who, as we know right now, is quite split down the middle in terms of ideologies, in terms of how they would like to move forward. You have a new generation of Venezuelan opposition that over the past 6 months has inspired a far-right violent movement here, a very young movement that had taken to the streets and resulted in the loss of property, resulted in the loss of lives, and they are calling for more of this street action if they do not get their way, for lack of a better words. People like Freddy Guevara and Julio Borges are begging for more sanctions from the United States, are begging for international intervention. But then you have people like Henry Ramos Alup and Jesus Torrealba who are saying, listen, Venezuela spoke over the last regional elections, and we have to learn, or accept rather, acknowledge that we were defeated in the regional elections, focus on a plan to move forward, and focus on how we would like to get Maduro out of government. So it's very split down the middle. They've been asking for peace talks with the government. They've gotten peace talks with the government, but persons like Guevara and his following are saying we do not want peace talks. We want no conversation with the government of Nicolas Maduro. All we want is them out of power, violently or otherwise. Soini.
Well, it's a very confusing situation, but thank you for keeping us updated. Thanks for that update, Reagan Devines. That was Reagan Devines in Caracas. And time now for other stories. The Peruvian Congress approved a bill that authorizes the medicinal and therapeutic use of cannabis and its derivatives in the country. The proposal received 67 votes in favor, 5 against, and 3 abstains of the full legislative body, which allowed the bill to be enacted by the executive without going through the second voting session as required by law. The bill will legalize the medicinal use of marijuana and its derivatives such as cannabis oil to alleviate the symptoms of diseases such as cancer, epilepsy, and Parkinson's disease. The violent police operations against Chile's Mapuche people have suffered a serious setback. The Supreme Court has decreed the immediate release of the people accused in Operation Hurricane, ruling that their preventative detention violates a basic human right, the presumption of innocence and due process.
An ironic coincidence. Just when the Supreme Court declared without effect the court decision that imprisoned irregularly 8 Mapuche comuneros, the Chilean Chancellor, Heraldo Muñoz, received a group of self-proclaimed Venezuelan judges and criticized the government and its justice system.
Chile, as the national anthem says, Chile is a refuge from oppression.
The paradox is that while the Chilean justice tries to repair the unfair and arbitrary reactions of the government, the Chilean government sets itself up as a referee in America, and particularly on Venezuela. I think that today we learned a big lesson. We got to worry about what's happening at home before we start criticizing what's happening abroad.
The so-called Operation Hurricane is unprecedented. A hunt against several Mapuche leaders who on September the 7th were taken into preventative detention, accused of illicit terrorist association.
This is a farce. That's really clear. It's political persecution. They violate their own laws and have ignored all the guarantees of due process.
Violent arrests, with no warrant and no concrete incriminating evidence against the accused. Only text messages, without names or telephone numbers attached.
The judge should look after the most vulnerable, in this case the accused. The judge has to respect their rights and guarantees as recognized in the Constitution and international agreements, but she didn't do her job.
That's why the Supreme Court was very clear in accepting the habeas corpus appeal presented by the defense. It considered that there wasn't enough evidence to support the Mapuche's imprisonment.
That's why the precautionary measures expired, and for the same reason, they ordered the immediate release of the people who were in preventive prison.
A sentence without foundation is an illegitimate sentence. It is illegal and arbitrary, and that's the correction that the criminal chamber of the Supreme Court has made.
Hector Yautul, one of the Mapuche political prisoners released, spoke with Telesur.
With huge joy, because this means we are obtaining our freedom. What we would like to highlight is a powerful signal that the Supreme Court is sending on how they approach a conflict that has a political and historical character, because it has criminalized the struggle of our people.
The investigation will continue, but it now presumes the innocence of those who never should have been in prison.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Spain's Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy has confirmed that he will go ahead with measures to suspend Catalonia's autonomy. On Saturday, Rajoy is expected to announce that measures will be imposed that will impose Madrid's direct rule over Catalonia based on Article 155 of Spain's constitution. He said that these will have the backing of Spain's opposition Socialist Party, which says it has agreed to hold regional elections in Catalonia in January 2018. Our correspondent Joanna Ortiz is in Barcelona with the latest. John, can you hear us?
¿Qué tal, compañeros? Saludos desde Barcelona, comparecencia de
both the Spanish government spokesperson Íñigo Méndez de Vigo and the Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy have spoken on the same day that we learnt about a pact with the Socialist Party, the PSOE, to force fresh elections in Catalonia in January. Íñigo Méndez said that applying Article 155 will restore the rule of law and return neutrality to Catalonia's institutions. This would also mean intervention in the public broadcasters TV3 and Radio Catalonia. We also heard from Mariano Rajoy, who is in Brussels, and he lamented the fact that the opposition in the Catalan parliament cannot express itself. He was referring to the rapid passing of the separation laws without debate, so neither the opposition nor those in favour spoke. He also said that, thanks to the Constitutional Court, that the Constitution remains in force in Catalonia, and that the region also has its own constitution.
para que estas medidas sean
He said action is needed, that they have been considering a number of measures when applying Article 155, and that there is an agreement with the Socialist Party and with Ciudadanos, the new centre-right party, on applying these measures. Rajoy said that Catalonia was not on the agenda of the EU summit, which he is attending in Brussels, because this is a domestic matter, not an international one. However, yesterday, various European leaders closed ranks in favour of the unity of Spain, including the President of the European Commission, Donald Tusk, and the President of the European Parliament, Antonio Tajani. They both said that there was no possibility of an independent Catalonia within the European Union, and that it would be better to not declare independence because no EU state would recognise it. From Brussels, Rajoy again accused the Catalan leaders of riding roughshod over the law, and that in the 21st century they couldn't have done worse, referring to the current situation created by the pro-independence forces. He blamed those who have broken the law, calling them irresponsible and extremist authorities. This is the kind of language that we have heard often before from the Spanish right and the pro-union forces. And that is the news from Brussels, but in reality it is not news at all. So we'll be following this, although we do not expect big changes today. But tomorrow there will be a Spanish cabinet meeting to approve the application of Article 155 and the suspension of Catalonia's autonomy.
Mañana sí, porque mañana hay Consejo de Ministros y se aprobará la aplicación de este artículo 155 y ahí estaremos pendientes de todo.
That report from John Ortiz in Barcelona. It is the third day of the Chinese Communist Party's 19th Congress, which is the country's most important political event. So what have we learned from the third day of the party's Congress? For starters, the party chief confirmed plans to set up a free trade port in Shanghai that would be in line with the central government's guidelines. The aim of the free trade port is to ease restrictions for incoming cargo. Another major task is for Shanghai to accelerate the development of a scientific innovation center with global influence.
提交各代表团讨论。会议通过了在正式选举时提请大会通过。提交各代表团酝酿。
Our correspondent Isiara Diaz has this report from the Congress in Beijing.
Sí, gracias colega, saludos para ti, saludos también para todas las personas que se informan con nosotros a esta hora a través de la señal informativa.
Greetings to all the viewers of Telesur. Today's session of the 19th Congress of China's Communist Party was marked by parallel meetings between delegations from different provinces. As a matter of fact, Chinese President Xi Jinping led a discussion panel between delegates from the province of Beizhou. The debates were centered around the ideas on how to implement the socio-economic development strategy in the country, to allow this nation to become a socialist and modern country in the middle of the 21st century. Also, the 2,887 delegates, which include the Ministry of Computer and Technology Industries, talked about the possibility of implementing a new kind of industrialization to prioritize domestic consumption, which includes the provision of services with the intention of changing the economic model, which this Asian giant has been following in recent years in an attempt to stabilize growth. There was also the recurrent idea of transforming the Asian country into a leader in innovation. The innovation idea was a priority suggested by the Chinese Prime Minister, who is also present at this National Congress of the Communist Party. And through these innovative ideas, an improved effort is being made to fight environmental pollution and to seek a better and broader economy for China, a more inclusive economy. All these ideas have been defended by the Chinese President Xi Jinping for the first time in this National Congress of the party. The idea of a delegates hall was also introduced, which means that 70 delegates will be available for interviews and statements to the media, to allow more transparency and openness than in previous meetings. We'll be following everything here at this National Congress of the Communist Party of China. Back to you in the studio.
Isiara Diaz, reporting from Beijing. We've come to the end of this midday news brief. For this and many other stories, you can find them on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Sweeney Gray. Thank you so much for watching.